Chapter 6. Crash walked forward a few steps.
Are you still mad at me?
I wasn't mad at you. I just don't like you to argue with them.
Them?
The captain and Guilders.
He held up his hand. Please, I just ate.
Crash, that's not funny. Don't talk about them like that. It was your fault, you know. The captain trusted you and—
It wasn't my fault, he protested. If I'd been in the Alacrity 1, I could have—
But this wasn't the Alacrity 1. It was a starship. Why couldn't you just trust Guilders? In his usual cavalier manner, his answer was to change the subject.
Who was that fellow who was in here just now?
I sighed. He told you. Lieutenant Howitz, the navigator.
You know him?
He pulled a chair closer to me and hung his jacket over the back. I just met him today. I treated him in sickbay this morning, and then he and his dad were with the captain during lunch.
His dad?
Crash had seated himself in the chair, and now he sat upright.
His father is on board too?
I was puzzled by this line of questioning. Why are you asking me all this? Do you know him?
I don't know.
He sat back and threw his arm across the back of the chair.
He reminded me of someone I knew when I was a little kid.
Is that one of the people you told the doctor had left Earth?
Oh, so he told you about that?
He stood and started to pace.
No, he's not the person who left Earth. And neither of them are named Howitz. It's Leek and his assistant Mars. But I haven't seen them here.
He sat down again and tried to relax.
What do you know about this Howitz?
August. His name's August. He and his dad have been on the ship a month, and his dad is the first engineer. He suffers from orthostatic hypotension.
Whoa, don't be giving me doctor's talk, Andi. You know I don't like it.
Well, you know I don't like you arguing with the captain and Guilders.
That's different.
Why is it different?
Because I'm older than you.
I was about to give some indignant reply, but he intercepted it.
I don't think you understand, Andi. I'm sorry you got hurt, but part of being an adventurer is to take risks. Guilders isn't willing to do that, and that's why he'll never grow as a pilot. He's afraid.
This almost made sense, but it wasn't right. First of all, Guilders never seemed afraid to me. Secondly, don't you think it's a little presumptuous for you to say Guilders won't grow? He's had so much more experience than you. I wanted to add, and you're the one who crashed us, not him, but I didn't. He smiled patiently.
That's the point. He is more experienced than me. By virtue of the fact that he was in space when I was in diapers, I know that. But which one of us is better?
He expected me to say him. It was logical. He was a famous pilot with clients lining up for his services. He'd done things no one had done in the history of space travel until he came along. He'd flown for governments, scientists, and lots of jobs he couldn't even tell us about. Guilders, on the other hand, had just been a quiet helmsman on a chartered exploration vessel for 30 years. The doctor trusts Guilders, I began.
Of course. I trust him, usually. But in the face of an emergency, which one of us is willing to step out to do what needs to be done, regardless of consequences?
I was confused. Crash was, that was true. But didn't he have a lot more accidents than Guilders? Was that true courage or just rashness? I shook my head but didn't answer. After an awkward silence, a rarity between the two of us, I asked, how long until we reach Alpha 5433?
Too long for my taste. The asteroid damaged the attitude control system, and your beloved Guilders is creeping at a snail's pace until it's repaired. It should take a couple days to get it up and running again.
The captain's not happy, is he?
Nope, not one bit. But then, what else is new?
Crash, please.
Sorry, And. I forgot. No captain or helmsman bashing allowed.
I didn't feel like talking to him anymore. Good night, Crash.
He whistled and stood up. That's a subtle hint. Well, good night, cousin. See you tomorrow.
Picking up his jacket and throwing it over his shoulder, he left. Sitting up after the door closed behind him, I pulled up my skirt to take a look at my knee. There was no sign of anything wrong, not even the slightest degree of redness. With a sigh, I realized how late it was getting and thought I should get to bed. I was tired, emotionally and physically, and sleep sounded attractive. I stood carefully, wary of putting pressure on the knee. It felt a little numb as I walked to my wardrobe to dress for bed, but otherwise seemed normal. After I'd thrown on a nightgown and brushed my teeth, I knelt beside the bed to pray. My thoughts wandered, however, slipping through the events of the day. Not just my knee pains, though that was enough to think about. Crash played a large part in my thoughts, as did August and his father. There was also Dr. Holmes's strange warning and the people that Crash didn't like who had left Earth. I didn't like any of it. Things had been perfectly fine when I woke up that morning. I jerked my thoughts back to my prayer again. Lord, thank you for protecting the ship today. Thank you for what? What had I been going to say? My thoughts were wandering again. Was the doctor really in danger? Could my knee have anything to do with Dr. Holmes? Surely not. I snapped my thoughts back again. Please protect us all, Lord. Don't let anything bad happen to us. Don't let anything bad happen to us? How flat was that? But that was really all I wanted at the moment. Keep us safe. Thanks. Good night. As I crawled under the covers, I felt unsatisfied somehow. I called to the lights to turn off, then snarled in the dark, pulling the blankets up under my chin. It was all Crash's fault, I decided. He'd brought us these silly suspicions, and he'd made a mistake on the bridge. But now everything was fine. The malfunctions would be repaired soon, and in the meantime I should relax. Sleep came quickly, and I wasn't bothered by dreams, at least not that I could remember. When I drifted back to consciousness the next morning, I became aware of a beeping nearby. I kept my eyes closed, not moving. The beeping went on, and I pulled the covers over my head. It didn't stop, and I was forced to put the covers down and look around for the source. My wristcom. I was being paged. Gripping it clumsily off my nightstand, I answered the call. Yes?
Andi, I'm leaving. I thought you'd want me to wake you up.
My brain buzzed tiredly as I tried to place the voice. Crash. Leaving? I mumbled. Where are you going?
Get dressed and come to Port Airlock 1.
I laid down the comm and dragged myself out of bed. Still half asleep, I went through the motions of pulling on my uniform and dragging a comb languidly through my hair. I was not a morning person, as opposed to Crash and the doctor, both of whom could jump out of bed in the wee hours and be fully lucid immediately. Forgetting to put on my wristcom, I stumbled out of the room and made my way somehow through the dim halls to Airlock 1. Dim lights. What time was it anyway? It must be before 6. When I reached the airlock, it was open. Crash and the doctor stood inside, speaking soberly. I heard the doctor say, I don't know, I just met him.
He's too much like Sanderson for my liking.
Crash scowled as he said this. I never did like him.
You don't know that it is him.
Crash turned then and saw me blinking sleepily in the entrance. Where are you going? I asked.
They've bamboozled me into being a scout.
I was unaware that anyone could bamboozle him into anything. A scout? The doctor moved to my side and put an arm around my shoulders, shaking me slightly to wake me up.
Trent and that new commander decided it would be a good idea to send him ahead with Wales.
Wales? Mr. Wales was the scientist. To test for life?
Yes.
I found myself wondering if Gilders had been involved in the decision at all. Kind of sudden, isn't it? I was still not entirely awake.
Trent asked me about it last night, Crash explained, but you were already asleep.
I wanted to protest that I'd been asleep when he called me, but I resisted. Besides, I knew I would have been mad if I'd awakened and found that he'd left without saying goodbye. The captain strode in, already shaved and uniformed, looking as fresh and energetic as if he'd been up and about for hours.
How are preparations going, Mr. Crash? He asked.
Mr. Wales appeared behind him, lugging a crate of equipment. Crash caught his eye and jerked his head towards the access of the Alacrity 1. Wales nodded and began carrying his load toward the speeder.
Almost done, Crash answered. Should be just a couple minutes.
How exactly would the Alacrity 1 get there before us? Speeders could travel at higher velocities than starships because they were built for nothing but speed. They could also take more direct routes than larger ships. The Alacrity could get there and back in half the time it would take the Surveyor to reach Alpha 5433, especially if we weren't operating at maximum efficiency.
I want you to employ warp as long as possible, the captain instructed. If memory serves, the Alacrity 1 is a 4K speeder.
This referred to how close a craft could get to an object without having to slow to propulsion, another factor in the speed of different vessels. The Surveyor was closer to a 12K. Crash's chest expanded with pride.
3K, sir.
3K? The captain's eyes widened.
I've never even heard of a 3K. Excuse me, Trent, but you have. You've heard of the Alacrity 1.
I giggled, and the captain had to smile.
I suppose I shall have to concede that.
Crash's eyes went past the captain, and he smiled.
She can actually get a little closer than that, but to be safe, I say 3K.
I turned to look and saw Gilder standing there. Suddenly I understood, at least partially, why Crash had allowed himself to be talked into this.
I don't think anyone would believe a 2K, Gilders commented, stepping in.
Crash sniffed and turned away.
Are you ready, Mr. Wales?
Wales stuck his head out of the access.
I'm ready. Be careful, the captain said. You should be able to stay in contact with us the whole time. I think so.
Crash approached me and the doctor and looked at us with a smile.
I'll be back in a few days.
I nodded, and the doctor laid a hand on Crash's shoulder, but said nothing. Crash turned to me and opened his arms. I flew to them and hugged him tight, feeling a sudden pang of guilt for blaming my unrest on him.
Stay out of trouble while I'm gone, he joked.
I will, I assured, my voice muffled by his jacket. He let me go and with a last smile disappeared into the Alacrity 1's access. Clear the airlock, a technician called through the intercom, and I reluctantly backed out and into the hall, watching the opening of Crash's speeder until the airlock entrance slid shut with a loud whoosh. I felt a strong vibration as the speeder pulled free from her moorings and zoomed out into open space. I caught a glimpse of the Alacrity through the porthole as it raced away. It was a good idea to send him off. It would help us. It was a logical move for the captain to make. So why was a feeling of unease settling over me?